Oh, I'm really excited about today's podcast. I cannot wait. It's like every time I turn around and I read an article about the business of dentistry, it just oftentimes makes me cringe. As all of you know, the name of our company is My Practice, My Business, and it's named that for a reason. So when we're teaching and training, I actually have participants say the name of the company. They say it back, My Practice, My Business. That's right. It's your practice, and it's also a business that you have to run. That's why we teach, and we have marked the phrase, the clinical business of dentistry. Well, I read an article, and I'm going to share that article with you, and we're going to get into direct operating costs and why they're important, but more importantly, we're going to talk about why some of our best thought leaders in dentistry, people you wouldn't even imagine missing it. Missing what? Missing the mark when it comes to profits and profitability. We begin our podcast right there.
Computers are live, mixer is up, levels are good. Equalizer is good, ready channels 1 and 2. Mic is live in 3, 2, 1, roll it. Welcome listeners to the My Practice, My Business podcast, where we teach dentists and their teams how to reclaim forgotten profitability in dentistry with our clinical business of dentistry training. And now, the host of our show, the clinical director at My Practice, My Business, Dr. Rob Thorup.
With all the things going on in our country right now, sometimes you have to just take a step back and count your blessings, right? And I just want all of you to know that Tracy and I have been very, very blessed to have trained hundreds of dental offices throughout the years. And at the end of our training, I ask the teams what the most important takeaway is from our training. And the most common response they tell me is this: it's understanding the direct operating costs per hour of the practice as they relate to the profitability of the dental procedures that they perform. In the clinical business of dentistry team training that we do here at My Practice, My Business, we teach business concepts that are definitely not taught by most dental consultants, let alone the industry. This has never become more apparent to me than this month. Oftentimes, we are unintentionally misled by people with good intentions, and such is the case today that I'm going to relate to. One of my colleagues sent me an article written by a well-known author in our profession. I honestly believe that this good colleague and the intentions of his article meant well, but unfortunately, it couldn't have missed the mark further as he presented his information on profitability with composite restorations. As I've said before, dentists lack business training, and we don't know what we don't know. At least he gave it a good try, though. I am going to give him that. Having said that, here at My Practice, My Business, we teach clinically driven business skills that are simply not taught in any other dental trainings. By understanding your practice's direct operating costs, you can drill down into all dental procedures you perform and know if they're profitable or break even or worse, upside down. I'm going to describe how we teach this important business concept and then relate it to the article that I just read the other day and hopefully give you a better understanding that will fill the business picture of the realities of what it takes to be profitable within your dental practice. I mean, true profitability. Direct operating costs are to be viewed on an hourly rate. What that means is that we total up all of our costs of doing business each quarter and divide it by the number of hours worked over that 3-month period. We do this on a quarterly basis because it gives us a snapshot of what is sometimes a moving target month to month. Direct operating costs are averages, not absolutes, because some months have higher costs of goods, days worked, and other operational costs that typically differ from one month to the other. The example that I'm about to give is for Utah-based prices. And where we are, we're near the bottom of insurance reimbursements here in Utah. and we have a low cost of living compared to other states. However, the percentages that I'm going to give are near equal when comparing to other states with increased reimbursements, because your increased reimbursements typically translate to an increase in cost of living for the area. So this formula works every single time we have a practice come through training from a different state. For example, say that your accounting software shows you spent $179,580 over the last 3 months on payroll, rent, lab, and supplies. And every single little expense you wrote a check for. That's right, you've got to count everything. You can't just go, well, that's not really an expense we have that month. No, you got to count them all, okay? Now look at the hours you worked in your office and say over that 3-month period that you worked 405 hours over those 3 months. Finally, divide the 405 hours into the $179,580 of costs to run your practice, and you come up with an hourly direct operating cost to run your business, your practice, of $443.41. Wow! You have an overhead requiring your production rate to be $443 per hour to break even. Does this number include corporate profitability? In most cases, it does not. So let's look at a couple of procedures you do every day just to break even. How about the mighty surgical extraction? Most insurances allow a big whopping $125 on average for a surgical extraction in our state. We never know exactly how long that first molar will take to get out of the mouth. You know, that tooth that's been root canaled 200 years ago, has no periodontal ligament around the roots, and has bone a mile high around it. You get the picture. I know you know where I'm going with this. So you seat the patient, you inject them with lidocaine, and let them go numb for 10 to 15 minutes. You get the tooth out in another 15 minutes if things go fairly well and roots don't snap off, right? Then there is another 15 minutes of patient instructions, dismissal, and room turnover. That's a 45 minutes of procedural time. If your direct operating cost is $443 per hour, that procedure just cost you about $332 of direct operating costs with time involved, of which you were paid a big whopping $125 for. You are $207 in the red. Do you have 2 hygiene rooms going at the same time? Because I sure hope you do. With patients that need an exam, prophy, and x-rays? You might just break even if you do, but chances are you do not. Does anyone here see a problem with this simple business concept? Exactly. One of our clients up in the Northwest, she told me she just refers out all of her extractions. She learned early in her career that she wasn't profitable at all. Let the oral surgeon be unprofitable. That was smart business for her until she came through our training. Okay, now she knows how to be profitable on the procedure. Now let's have some fun with the subject of the article that I read, the dental composite filling. We typically see insurance reimbursements around $110 for posterior tooth surface composites in our neck of the woods. For me, I have my team schedule the first tooth at 30 minutes, allowing for what? For consent to be signed, anesthetic to kick in, and hopefully 15 minutes to complete. Each additional tooth, if there are more teeth involved, will be set at 15 additional minutes for each one. So 3 tooth surface composite fillings are typically scheduled for 1 hour. If your direct operating cost per hour is still at $443 and the reimbursement is at $110 for each tooth, I just made $330 in that hour of work. And I'm upside down in the red, running at a deficit of $113. Now, I hope you all followed me with that, right? And if I'm getting $110 for each tooth and I do 3 of them in an hour, that's 3 times 110. Okay? That's $330, if my math serves me right. Okay. And my DOC was 443. So yes, I'm upside down. I run a 3 operatory practice with 1 hygienist going full time. If that hygiene patient does not need x-rays, I'll typically make $75 for the cleaning, for the exam and cleaning appointment. I'm still $38 in the hole. And that $443 is just to break even to run my business. It does not include corporate profitability, which is something we hammer on with our My Practice, My Business training, our clinical business and dentistry training, okay? And that should be at 30%. In other words, I just paid $38 out of my payroll, to do my patient's dentistry in that hour. And I never got a thank you from the patient. Okay, isn't that crazy? Oh, thanks for doing my work for me, for paying for some of it. It's the corporate profitability being at 30% above that direct operating cost per hour just to break even that pays for new equipment, raises, bonuses for the team, equipment repair, and other such dental expenses. Most practices pay for those above-mentioned expenses with what? The doctor's wages. Oops, there's the big secret. It's out now. That's why you're not making money, doc. Cost of living goes up, staff wages go up, dental and lab supplies go up, and the doc's wages go down. But not with MPMB clients, not here, not with our dental business training, more specifically, the clinical business of dentistry training. Now, let's address the article in question. Again, I want to emphasize, it's not my intention to humiliate the author, but it is my intention to battle misinformation. And that's where we're going to go from here. Some of you guys might recognize the article. If you do, bless his heart, at least he tried. And at least he's talking about it because nobody talks about what we're going to talk about here. Okay, starts out the article, quote, "What does it cost you to do a 2-surface composite resin on a patient? And how much more does it cost you if that restoration fails and you have to repeat the procedure?" End of quote. Yes, I'm going to break up this article and I'm going to talk about each section. When I first read the questions, I got really excited. I thought, sweet! There are other thought leaders like myself who are actually looking at procedural profitability. There are some who I know of who get very laser focused with profit margins on each and every procedure. They'll actually drill down into it more than we do. In my business experience, there are just too many variables in dentistry, and I don't agree with that specific of a breakdown. But I also don't disagree with it either. For me, if it's not fast, simple, and easy to calculate, I don't want to deal with it. I just don't have the time. This is why we take the direct operating cost per hour approach as it can pertain to all things we do in dentistry, not just the common procedures. I just want to point that out and tell you the method to our madness. Okay, he continues, quote, "In just about every other industry in the world, managers have a keen understanding of how much it costs them to manufacture a product or provide a service. With this knowledge in hand, companies figure out how much to charge for that good or service. They make informed decisions about what materials they can afford to use and how to set wages. After all, a business can't stay in business for very long if it's barely breaking even every time it makes a transaction, right?" End of quote. This is where most dentists don't have a business background to understand we have both products and services to provide. Blending the two together is what we do in our field. That's why we are a monopolistic competitive business. Look that term up. In his article, he is separating the two. I know I just lost most of you there. Just stay with me. Suffice it to say, we sell products and services together. I hear many times that people say, "I provide a service." No, you don't. You sell products too. Wake up. All right? So we sell products and services together, not individually. And managers in every other business have this understanding of profit margins and profitability, but not in dentistry. So he's correct in that statement. I love that he made that statement. This is what I call, though, the dichotomy of dentistry. Look up that podcast I did a while back, and it will explain that term of what the dichotomy is. And it has to do with us dentists throwing in people into the office manager position without any commensurate achievement, let alone training. And we just tell them, do the job. We set them up for failure. We set them up to be yelled at. And that's why there's a lot of burnout in that position. Continuing with the article, quote, and yet in the dental profession, we provide our healthcare services day after day with little knowledge of how much it really costs us to do so. If we knew how much it cost us to provide a service, we can set our fees to improve profitability, decide if we can afford to become in-network with a third-party payer, and evaluate the cost of our materials. We can also uncover the hidden costs of redoing restorative procedures, which can be the real profit killer for dentists. End of quote. Right here, I could tell this author was going to focus on materials, which is a good thing, but I knew he was going to miss the boat on it. And when he related redoing the procedure, relating it also to materials, I knew I was not going to be happy with his analysis. Let's continue. Quote, calculating your profit margin. The tool we need is called gross profit margin. It's a simple calculation that shows us how profitable a particular service is, expressed as a percentage. The higher the percentage, the more profitable. It's like calculating your overall practice, overhead, and profitability, but just for a single procedure. We begin by adding up the costs of our direct materials. That is, the dental supplies that we use to do a two-surface composite. Make a list of all the consumables you use. Anesthetic cartridges, matrix bands, composite, etc. And start plugging in your costs from your supplier. You may be surprised how expensive some of your materials really are. Once we have our direct material cost, we now must add in our direct labor expenses. In this case, that will be the cost of your chairside assistant. Sure, you have a whole team of front desk personnel and hygienists in the office, but they're not directly helping you do a composite. So leave them out of this calculation. If it takes you 30 minutes to do a two-surface composite, then you take your assistant's hourly wage and cut it in half to find your direct labor. Add your direct materials and direct labor together to get your total cost. Subtract this from your revenue, the fee you hope to collect, divide by the revenue again, multiply by 100, and you have your gross profit margin. End of quote. Oh, God. Okay, you got me right there. This myopic view is so unbelievable to me. It's the production from that composite filling which generates income to maintain the entire team and office for that matter. You can't cut them out. You have to look at the entire business. We're not a wholesale distributor. Do we send them home since they don't directly help with the procedure? Again, this is why the entire direct operating cost per hour of the practice has to be looked at when analyzing your entire business operations. Also, that equation he uses is too complicated for most dentists. It took me 2 reads, 2.5, I'm going to say, for me to figure out exactly what he's calculating. Anyway, let's continue. Quote, in my office, I discovered my total direct material cost for a two-surface composite was $7.80. My assistant is paid $18 per hour, so that makes $9 in direct labor cost. That means the total direct cost is $17 rounding up. So there's the answer. It costs me $17 to do a two-surface composite in my practice. That obviously excludes my other expenses and office overheads, but let's keep things simple and focus on just this single procedure. While that information, $17 figure, is interesting, it becomes more useful when we express it as a gross profit margin. For that, we'll need my fee, which of course varies based on what third-party payer is involved. End of quote. I'm sure some of you right now are just out there dying. And I love this guy. He's bringing attention to the fact that we've got to be looking at our direct operating costs. But man, he is just like, I don't know, just bless his heart. He's so far off. Suffice it to say that those businesses who only sell products look at gross profit margins. They do. They really do. Surprise, we also sell our time. This is why looking at this article is so deceptive to the unlearned reader. As a dental business leader, you cannot nonchalantly exclude all your other business expenses. We're small corporations. You have to look at everything, okay? What he's doing is just looking at what we call costs of goods. You can't just exclude your other operating expenses when you're looking at the overall picture. In the dental business model of profitability, it's misleading to present profit margins with direct operating costs from one team member and cost of goods as your only talking point. This author shows a graph of his reimbursements of a two-surface composite and presents profit margins as such. He shows his office fee is $230. With that direct operating costs, or what it costs him to do a composite he thinks of $17, the 17 off the $230 shows a 93% profit margin if you're looking at it that way. His third-party payer number one was $121, and he says that's an 86% profit margin. Third-party payer number two was $88 of reimbursement, which means he had a profit margin of 81%. And the third-party payer fee, number three, was $57, and he says that's a 70% profit margin. With those fees and his calculated profit margins in mind, okay, I want to continue. Quote, so, a two-surface composite is 93% profitable on my private fees, which is an outstanding number. There are many other industries that would love to have margins as good as that on their goods and services. End of quote. Again, let's just stop right there. If all I was doing in my company was selling widgets and gizmos, he is correct. I would be near list pricing and making bank. But that's not the monopolistic competitive business that dentistry is. He should know this, I would think, with the position he holds in our profession. Bless his heart, and I do mean that sincerely, I don't believe he does. He's trying. At least he's pointing this out and bringing attention to it. But man, the way he's making it sound, it's like, we'd all be retired after 10 years if this were true. So continuing, quote, please keep in mind that this does not mean I get to put 93% of my fee in my pocket as profit. This is a gross profit calculation, not a net profit one. We still have to pay for the rest of our staff, our rent, and all of the other overhead expenses needed to run a dental practice. But this does not tell us that a bread and butter service like two-surface composites are a great business for us. This does not tell us that it's great. It also shows us how much of a financial hit we take when we accept lower fees. Table 2 that I quoted you guys shows that my lowest paying network fee of $57 drops my gross profit margin down to 70%. Ouch. We're still profitable, but there's substantially less margin for the business. End of quote. Oh my gosh. This is why we simplify what we teach and keep it just sound without any major formulations when we teach this stuff. Right here, he clearly showed he does not understand how to look at procedural profitability. Let me be very clear. You have never been profitable on composite fillings with PPO plans. Never. And most of you are not profitable with your fee-for-service fees either. When we analyze what you're charging out in your fee-for-service fees and look at your profit, your direct operating costs and what you're actually profitable on, we see that all the time with every practice we train. Many thought leaders have stated this fact, and I'm stating it now. I get it that he is attempting to speak on gross profit margin, but you can't say we're still profitable followed by less margin for the business. You can't say that. That's just an accounting oxymoron. One must take into account the entire direct operating costs with costs of goods when evaluating profit margins on procedures. All direct operating costs. Someone, please give me a Motrin. I can't take it. Okay, continuing the read. Quote, 3 key lessons to boost your profitability. I've been studying gross profit margin for a few years now, and there are some important lessons to share. Improving profitability is not just about lowering costs. Buying less expensive composite materials or matrices may seem like a quick way to cut costs and get some profit margin back. But it's not the best solution. Even the lowest network fee in my practice still provides a decent margin of 70%. Composites are a profitable service. Continuing with the quote, take pride in the materials you use and your ability to offer a great service. The race to the cheapest materials can get us into trouble. End of quote. Right here, he simply has no clue about profitability with composite restorations in relation to current reimbursement rates from, dare I say, all dental insurance companies. How he is presenting profitability, you guys, is just not accurate because he is looking at such a small picture in the overall dental business model. However, his premise of using quality materials is spot on. But how do you get paid fairly for using the best materials like Filtech, TPH, others that are out there, okay? Well, folks, that's exactly what we teach on. His margin of 70% does not take into account the overhead of the practice. Again, he is just looking at cost of goods and one direct operating expense, that of his assistant, which also is inaccurate. But at least he's trying. At least he's bringing awareness to this. He continues by saying, quote, redoing your work is very expensive. Whatever your gross profit margin is, don't let it vanish by having to perform the procedure a second time. While the direct cost of redoing a 2-surface composite restoration is only another $17, the real profit killer is lost billable chair time performing the procedure again without charging an office fee. That would set me back $230 in opportunity cost. Invest in materials you like to use that offer excellent patient outcomes. Invest in your handpieces and curing lights and make sure they work properly. Wasting time and materials doesn't just challenge your reputation with the patient, it's a profit killer. End of quote. Wow. He just alluded to his actual direct operating cost possibly being $230 for that procedure. Meaning he might have a $460 direct operating cost per hour without corporate profitability. Did anyone catch that? Keeping it real, even with the cheaper composites and bonding agents, redos just don't happen unless you really botch the procedure with blood or spit or Diet Coke floating in the prep while you're trying to bond it, okay? Even dental insurance companies have a replacement range of anywhere from 2 to 5 years. I can't remember, honestly, having a redo on a composite fill in that time frame mentioned. Not that I'm that good. It's the bonding agents and the composites are that good. Finally, he finishes by saying, quote, be efficient. Your assistant's salary is one of the most expensive costs of the procedure. Invest in their training. Think about optimal workflows that allow you to safely provide care in more than one operatory at a time. Invest in technology that improves your efficiency. The best way to battle your overhead and uncover more profit is to provide more great care in a given time. So, what does it cost you to do a 2-surface composite on a patient? I hope you'll find out for yourself. You'll be able to make better decisions for the business and ultimately your patients. End of quote. Provide more great care in a given time. Sounds like do more. Work harder, not smarter. Figure it out for yourself, he says. Go figure. I'll never forget the article in Dental Economics where Gordon Christensen stated how upside down most every practice is on a composite filling, especially on PPO plans. His solution His solution was that the dental assistants need to be more efficient and faster with composite procedures to increase profitability. It's the dental assistant's fault. I know it is. And how dentists need to do more fillings in one appointment. But my good mentor, Dr. Christensen, what if the patient only has 1 or 2 teeth involved needing composite fillings? I can't go make them up, right? Do you tell them to go somewhere else because you're not going to make any money on them? No one has the answer to profitability on composite fillings. Nobody has the answer to that question except for all of us here at My Practice, My Business. We have the answer on how to be profitable, and that's what we've taught for years. All of you need to take the first step towards legally and ethically reclaiming forgotten profitability in your practice by learning what we teach and train on in our clinical business of dentistry team training. There are very few thought leaders who teach and train on the business concepts that we do, and even fewer who know dental insurance rules and regulations and protocols like we do here at MPMB, more specifically, like Tracy does here at MPMB. Doing dentistry is hard enough, and running your dental practice is a profitable business. It shouldn't be a nonprofit experience. What's the most important thing you should know about your dental practice? It's your direct operating cost per hour. Knowing that simple dollar amount will open up your eyes to every procedure you do and whether you are profitable on it or not. And you should be profitable on every procedure you do, just like any other business. Thank you so much for tuning into the My Practice, My Business podcast. You can find additional podcasts you may have missed that will help you with your dental practice at Apple iTunes Podcasts. And remember to become a subscriber to our podcast. Many of you have asked how to help support the My Practice, My Business podcast. If you have enjoyed the program and information you received today, the best way to help is to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks again for allowing us to be a part of your day.